My name is Courtney Jadon Winstead, and I was born in Owensboro, Kentucky.
Really? Really?
Yes. I moved from Owensboro, Kentucky when I was 8 to Metropolis, Illinois, home of Superman. And then ended up in here in Louisville when I was 11, and I've been here ever since.
So what was life like in Owensboro?
Great. Life in Owensboro was family. Um, you know, I was born in the 70s, so growing up in the 80s, you just sent kids outside. We'd walk blocks down the street to the public pool, just a group of kids, no adults. Makes you wonder, did they love us? They just sent us out to drown, but we all came back, so it was beautiful. I was, all my cousins, my family's very big, and so we had extended family. So I grew up with not just my immediate first cousins, but second, third cousins. We all grew up as a unit. So it was awesome.
And so now you say you left Owensboro and you went from where?
Metropolis, Illinois.
Metropolis. So that's actually a real place, Metropolis.
Metropolis, Illinois. Right across the bridge from, like I'm sitting across the bridge from Louisville. It is right across the bridge from Paducah. Mm-hmm.
And so then, and I've got to ask this because it's Metropolis. A lot of people don't know, but a lot of people attribute it to the whole superhero thing. Mm-hmm. What was life like in Metropolis?
Whew. Well, that was a difficult place for me. I learned a lot of lessons in Metropolis that I did not receive in Owensboro. Well, looking back, I probably did get some of it in Owensboro, but in Owensboro, I was around family. It was, you went from one family house to the other. So it was very nurturing. Going to Metropolis, that was my first real go around of being around white people. And we were the only Black family. We lived on a dirt road. There may be 10 to 15 houses on that road. It was probably maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles long. It was a dead-end road. Me and my brother, when we went to school there, we went to a K through 8 school, and we were the only 2 Black children in the school. That's when I learned a lot about how children are giving beliefs, and how children are raised differently in their homes. Because at school I had friends. When I came home, those same people that went to school with me were not my friends. So it was a difficult transition for me. Because I went from a lot of love to kind of being afraid. So yeah.
So did you have a lot of racial tension in the community as well? I mean, was it passive, or are we looking at overt? Or
it was both. I had neighbors like right next door to me, where my classmate, who we got along really good in school, but when we came home, she was not allowed to talk to me. I didn't understand that. Like looking back as an adult, I understand everything that was going on. But as a child, I didn't understand, like, why can't Katina talk to me? Like, why can't I go knock on Katina's door and see if she can come outside and play? I just didn't understand that. Looking back as an adult, it just made me understand some of the behaviors that I saw, and really how it has affected my adult life and how I view the world.
Do you recall ever having any conversations with the other kids or anything as far as getting an understanding of why they could or couldn't?
I didn't have conversations with the children that couldn't talk to me, but the children that did talk to me, they would just make little comments about the other one's parents. Oh, well, that's just how they are. And, I don't recall anything specifically saying because you're Black, you can't, they don't talk to you or anything like that. But it was very obvious, again, looking back on it as an adult, it was very obvious. And my parents of course knew and they understood what was going on, but they didn't really talk to us about it. They didn't really talk to us about why these things were happening. What they did was they would one up. You don't want our kids playing with your kids? Okay, we're gonna go buy our daughter a motorcycle, and she's gonna be riding around on a motorcycle, while your kids are riding on a bike. They would do things. Oh, okay, you don't want. Well, we're gonna go get a satellite, and So they want to make sure that our neighbors knew that we were supposed to be there, that we have what you have, and we're capable, and we're not destitute. We're not below you. We are your equals, and we can provide for our children just as you can provide for yours. So I feel like that my parents wanted to make a statement in our children can have those things too. You know.
So how did that time there? How did that affect you? I mean, how did that affect you mentally?
Um, you know, I really, again, growing up, I really didn't understand until probably we moved here to Louisville, and I still had some of those same things that were happening. So now I'm putting two and two together. In Owensboro, there were these situations because my grandmother cleaned a home for a family, that her sister cleaned the home for the family, her mother cleaned the home for the same family. And that family was good to my grandmother. They bought her first house. They would give her nice, great presents for Christmas, buy her diamond earrings and pearls and things. And they were really nice. But their grandchildren were not nice to me. They made sure that I knew that I didn't belong in their space. They made sure that, you belong in the kitchen with your grandmother. But when they weren't there, they weren't at the home all the time. When they weren't there, the grandparents were great. They let me, go play on their stationary bike. They let me ride that. But when the kids were there, the kids were like, get off that bike, you're not supposed to be there. So, that was difficult. But I really didn't, I still really didn't understand because in Owensboro, I was really only around two families that weren't Black, and that was one of them. And the other family was a family that my aunt, my great aunt, my grandfather's sister, she cared for their children. So they would come to her house, and she lived directly across the street from my grandparents. So I was always back and forth. So I, grew up with these white children, and those are my family. Their parents were great to us. They were awesome. I mean, to this day, we are still connected to those people. And, so it was two different situations. And I really didn't know, I didn't know how to process that at that time. But as an adult, I do understand, it's allowed me to process as an adult on how to manage with people and really getting to know people and understanding who they are. Yeah.
So looking back with all of that happening, do you feel like it affected how you feel or how you engage with these individuals, or?
Absolutely. My trust level is limited, it's been things throughout my life, so as I got older, like into high school, I was aware when things were happening to me. I was very aware. And so I was kind of rebellious with that because I went to Ballard, and I went to Seneca and Ballard, but I only did 1 year at Ballard. But that 1 year, it had a major, major effect on me. I've always had image issues. I was always a little light-skinned little girl with long, pretty hair, and I was always told that, oh, you're so pretty, oh, your hair is so pretty, and it made me uncomfortable because here I am with my cousins, and you're not saying that about them, but I'm looking at these black-skinned women and thinking, why are you doing this to me? I'm looking at these black-skinned women, and I'm thinking they're so beautiful, and I'm so jealous because I've got people always asking me, what are you? And it got to a point in my life where, I'd be like, my mama a nugget, my daddy a nugget, this is what you get. We black and black. Like I want you to know. And so it was just a lot. And so I was always like in this gray space. I was always in this gray space where I wasn't black enough, and of course the white people are like, you are definitely black, but you're not a threatening black. I'm not threatened by you because you don't look threatening. So now I'm being treated a little bit differently than my black cousins or my black friends because you don't feel as threatened by me because I'm light skinned and I have nice gray hair, And that was very hard for me, because now I feel like my friends and my family, they're uncomfortable with me, and it's not me feeling this way, because I think you are so beautiful. And I'm like, why ain't my skin black? Like, why I'm just light brown? I want to be brown. I don't want to just be light brown. Why didn't my hair get an afro? Like, I want to have an afro. Why can't I have that? And all I got was, your hair's so beautiful. I want you to, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted it to be known. I'm a little black girl, and that was a very difficult. That was a difficult period. And going to Ballard, they, I felt a need to. I've always felt a need to stand up for people, and I was out at Ballard, and it would be them and they come from the projects and this and that, and I would always be like, "Who are you talking about? What do you mean them? Who?" And I get in fights at school with little white girls because they saying stuff, and I'm like, "You don't get to say that," I'm going to the office calling my mama. The teacher said, because at one point I had a teacher at Ballard High School. She was my science teacher, and she said, we were talking about something in class. I don't even remember what the conversation was in class, but I know at the end of it, I said something about calling my mama, and she's like, she probably come up in here in rollers and a scarf. That was a lot for me, because I'm like, this is following me throughout my life on people's views of Black people and what we're capable of. It made me feel like you didn't feel like we were capable to be anything, like this is all we could be. And someone in your home is giving you this image of this is all Black people can be. And I come from a long line, a very long line of doers and achievers, entrepreneurs. My great grandfather had barber shops. My grandfather, he worked at Texas Gas. He was the custodial supervisor for years. He was there for, I don't know, like 40 years, something like that. But he also had a business, Mennonite cleaning service, that he and my grandmother, that they ran for many, many years, that my mother and her sister bought from him. So I saw greatness. I grew up seeing what we could achieve and what we could be. And so anytime that I would be made to feel like Black people were less than, I'm like, hold on, dear. I know what we are and I know what we're capable of. I've seen it, I've lived it, and I can't allow you to make other Black people feel that they're not worthy or they're not capable, because I know that we are. And so I've always been one to want to uplift us, to make sure that we know our place in this world and that we can do and achieve and accomplish anything. There's nothing out here that we can't move forward, and be great at.
Well, you were receiving this attention, and you were saying that the individuals were saying that, because of your skin complexion, they were saying positive things about you, but not of your cousins. Did that ever affect your relationship with your cousins?
Oh, absolutely. Um, because I feel like that some of my cousins felt as though I had a privilege that they did not have, and that I was treated differently than they were. I mean, how as a 8-year-old child, we're all playing here, but you pick this one out and tell her how pretty she is and this, that, and the other, but you don't say anything to these other children. Like what message are you sending to them? You know, and I have a cousin that as we got older, we were at a family event and someone told her, "Oh, you've become so pretty. You're pretty now." And she was like, "So what are you saying? I was an ugly child? Like, what are you saying?" And I'm looking at her, I'm like, "Girl, you look exactly the same you always looked. You the same pretty today that you was when we was 8. I see the same face. So I don't know what they're talking about. But, that just let me know, what that felt like for her. And it wasn't just outsiders, it's family too. It's people inside the family because we as Black people, it's ingrained in us as well that, the lighter, the closer to proximity, you in a better place. You're not going to have the same difficulties that your darker skinned cousins are going to have. And so I think that, in our past, we have been brought up and raised up and taught things that colorism, that's where, it's within our families. And, I try to make sure that me going forward, that I don't do those same things, because, and I have to be aware of it. Even though I know what it feels like and I know what it felt like for me, it's still there. It was still, that's how I was brought up. That's the world that I was brought up in and the images that I saw. Um, so, I mean, it's difficult to even process just all of that.
Yeah. So then the things that your eyes were awakened to in Metropolis, you turned around and saw that those things were happening
Yeah,
in Louisville.
child. I got to Louisville, and when we first moved here, we moved in old Louisville. We were there for maybe about a year before we moved out into the suburbs out in Mutual. And again, only Black family on our street. And, I wasn't received all that great because, y'all make enough money to live over here? And the kids are like, "How do you live here?" And I'm like, "Because my mama bought that house right there." Like, I don't know, because that's the house I live in. Um, but my neighbor had a pool, and all the kids would come over and swim in the pool. Never invited me. I got invited one time, and they wouldn't allow me to get fully in the pool. I could sit on the edge of the pool. Um, but the kids, I mean, and it was, I'm not going to say it was the parents, but the parents did not stop it. They didn't come out and say, "That's not right. She can swim too." Um, but the kids made it very clear they didn't want me in the pool with them. Um, I went home and told my mom, and my mom, went to the neighbor and let her know that is not okay. You will not treat my daughter like that. Um, and it was even like the mom was really kind of mean to my brother because she had a teenage daughter and I had a teenage brother, and you know, we're friendly people. We speak, we're friendly. Um, that's just who we are. And she told my brother that do not talk to my daughter. Like he was not allowed to say hi to this girl. And it was just like, this is wild. Like how do you process that as children?
Growing up. How do you feel like that's affected your interaction with other
I'm
races,
working on it.
period?
I'm working on it. Um, it made me want to stay in a bubble with Black people, and I know that that's not, a viable plan. Like I can't just, I live in a very diverse world. I mean, and I love people. I like people. I like getting to know people. I like learning people's stories. Um, I want to really connect with people and know who you are. Um, but it has taken me time to process a lot of therapy, to process because I didn't know. I didn't know why I was the way I was or how I felt or how I would respond to people. I really didn't recognize it until, I got older and in my work environments, I would be one of few or lots of times the only. Um, so I was always on edge on how are we, how am I going to be received? What can I say? You know, I, I'm the angry black girl. I make women cry at work. And it wasn't that I'm intentionally trying to cause any harm, but I'm very matter of fact. And if this is a true statement and it's a fact, I'm going to say it. And you might not receive it that well. Well, now I'm better at making sure people are able to receive what I'm saying in a way that they can process it and not feel like they're being hit over the head with it. Um, you know, being one or one of two in an office setting. I mean, that's all I've ever really been around in a workplace, and there was difficulties in those spaces because I felt like oftentimes people could say what they wanted to say to me, but if I responded to what they said, then I was frowned upon. Courtney, you can't do that. Courtney, you can't say that. But they just said something just as crazy as me, or just as hurtful, or and not that I was trying to poke, but it was like I was always in defense. I always had this armor on that if you throw something at me, it's gonna bounce off this armor, but when it bounces off, it's gonna hit you really hard, and I had to be aware of that. Like I said, lots of therapy because I wanted to be a better person. And how do I get past? I can't be a better person until I can get past what has gotten me to this point. And
Do you feel like this is situations like this is what contributes to the stereotype of as a black woman you have to always have armor?
mhm, absolutely, absolutely. Um, as black women, I feel like um, we are we are supposed to have this armor. Like we don't things that affect other women don't affect us. Oh, you can deal with it. It's no big deal, and we probably can. Because we've had to. But should we have to? Shouldn't we be able to express our emotions without being made to feel as though the expression of our emotions is a negative thing? You know, um, Can't we get excited about something without it being seen as, oh, she's dramatic, or, she's being over the top, or, you know, um, we're allowed to feel, and I don't think that that's always been the message that we've been given, is that we're allowed to process and feel our emotions and they are valid. Um, I think that's a big piece of it is, recognizing the validity of how we feel and being able to express that and having people receive that that's how we feel without it being dismissed, you know.
Well, you talked about therapy, and at what point, or not so much as what point, but what was happening that made you say, okay, I need to go get some therapy to process some
Mhm.
things.
Well, what initially I went to therapy for was developing better relationships with my children. I have two daughters, and You know, I felt like we could better communicate with one another, that we were not receiving information from each other, you know. Um, and so I wanted to go to therapy to see what can I do to affect change on those relationships with my children. But in therapy, I was able to understand why I made certain decisions or why I responded in certain ways. Um, and it made me really look at what I can do differently in my response to situations, and how something that affected me in the past, how I can take that and use that for a more positive light instead of holding on to that anger. I didn't realize that I was holding on to so much, I really didn't realize that all of these things were connected. You know, I saw them as individual incidents, but then after I got to speaking on them, and I saw how, okay, these are patterns in my life that I've seen and that I'm holding on to. Um, Even at work with, um, you know, talking to people about Black history and things that have happened. A lot of the white people that I had worked with was not aware of what I thought was common knowledge. How do you not know who Emmett Till is? You know, like, I'm thinking, doesn't everybody know who Emmett Till is? And they're like, what is that? And, you know, I'm just like, oh my goodness, you know, that's major for me. That's a major part of who I am and how I view life. And if you're not aware, you know, I had a lady tell me that her uncle and father went to none of your business meetings every Thursday. And, you know, okay, we talked about that. But then with working with her, she would make comments. And I'm like, ooh, that that's not good. You know, like, you know, that's a really racist comment you made. Like one day she made a comment about throwing a rope, tying a noose in a rope and throwing it over a tree. And that affected me. I mean, like that day at work, I didn't say anything to anybody. I just packed my stuff up and I left because I was like, if I don't, my response, the way that struck me, I was scared I was going to lose my job. I was like, I can probably talk my way out of why I left work, you know, just getting up and leaving. I can probably manage through that. But if I respond the way I'm feeling at this moment, I'll lose my job. I knew that 100%. I left and then I came back because she would tell me stuff like, you base your information on stuff that your grandparents went through. You haven't had these type of experiences. And so I had to give her my real lived experiences. And after she made that statement about the noose in the tree, the next day I came into work and talked to her about it. And she really could not understand why that bothered me so much. It was really over her head. And so she's like, that's just what we say. You know, that's just what we just say that. And I was like, but why? Do you have any idea why you say that? What does a noose in a tree mean to you? Because I know what it means for me. So before I have this aggression or anger or frustration feeling, I need to know what it means to you, you know? And she couldn't really tell me. She was just like, it's just something we say. And I was like, well, let me tell you what it means to me. And when I said that, she was like, oh, that makes sense. You know, like, okay, that ain't what I meant by it, but I get where you're coming from. And I'm like, but it might not have been on the top of your head of that's what you meant by it, but that's where it comes from. And it's just been passed on. And I had been trying to explain like generational things, like how we pass things down generationally and not really realize that that's what we're doing. You know, it's just embedded in us. And, we have to be aware that we're not passing things on because I have to be aware because of my experiences with my grandchildren. I have 4 grandchildren. And I have to be aware that with my experiences, I can't push that on them. I want them to have better experiences than what I've had and be more open and aware of what's going on around them. So I try to, I know sometimes I can make comments and I try to be aware of, oh, you can't say that in front of these kids or, you just, making sure that I'm not putting my biases on them. And it's difficult. It's difficult. It's difficult.
Is that something that um, you're deeply concerned about? That the things that you've encountered and the things that you're seeking therapy for, you'll end up passing on to your kids and grandkids without them having a chance to get their own experiences?
Yes, yes, I do. I do. I that is a concern for me because I have very strong feelings based on what I've experienced. But I know that, I mean, yeah, I don't want to, I just want to make sure that I'm not hindering them in a way where they can't um, flourish. And, that they are really giving people the opportunity to be themselves and really get to know that person. Because I don't know that I have conquered that yet. I know that I am still in a space where I am not so trusting. You know, um,
Can you explain or elaborate more on what that space feels like?
uh, you know, I'm just always waiting. Like, I don't really know if I can believe a lot of the things that are put in front of me. Is this genuine? Like I'm always worried about if what someone is saying or doing is genuine, or are they doing this to get something out of it? Or do they want something from me? Do they think being in proximity is going to get them ahead? I'm really working on my relationships with white people. I have no white friends. I don't, which is crazy because I grew up around a lot of white people, and I don't have any white friends, and I don't want that to reflect on my grandchildren. Like have you some friends. Like make friends, whoever those friends are. Um, but I'm always thinking about the generation behind them. So you might be great. What's your mama like? You know, what is your mama saying? What is your grandfather saying? When you go over to your aunt's house, what's the conversation over there like? And are you standing up and saying, "Hey, that's not okay"? So I'm always worried about that. Like, okay, you can be nice to me, but when you go over here to your family reunion, what you doing? And I'm trying to get past that because I want to see people for who they are, as in their truth. Um, but I have not mastered that yet. I'm better, but I'm still working on that.
Well, it sounds like it's a continuing process.
It is. It is.
Let's say you've got one last conversation with your children and grandchildren, and this is it. This is the last conversation, and then you're swooped off.
Mhm.
What is the legacy message that you want to give them?
Family is the most important thing. Um, family, um, legacy, knowing where you come from, knowing what you're capable of, knowing what the people before you accomplished um, through whatever uh, hardships that may have been placed in front of them, that we are able, that our bloodline tells us that we are conquerors, that we can accomplish anything, and that it is our job to make sure that the generations in front of us know about the generations behind us. That is huge to me. I think that is the most important thing that I could give my grandchildren is the knowledge of who they are and where they come from, because as African Americans, we don't have that. Like we don't know. We can't say, oh, our Irish family came over in 1857 and they landed in on Ellis Island, and we don't have that. And so, in order to, feel like we have our feet planted and that we are a viable part of this country that we're in, I need them to know this is where you come from. This is your stock. This is your bloodline. These are the people who accomplished so many things so we could be here today, and for it to feel real to them. It's one thing to see, we have our same 5 Black people that, we celebrate Black History Month, and those are the 5 Black people that we're going to tell everybody. I want them to be connected. You love everybody, like that was the message I was given. Now, my experiences made me be like, oh, okay, I've had some experiences and I'm like, I'm supposed to love that person? What are we doing here? But I was raised that we love everybody, we're all here together. My grandmother, I told you it was my girl. She was a caregiver. Like, she took care of everybody, and it didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter your race. None of that mattered. I've always been taught to give, like you give back to your community, and I mean, that's what's always been instilled in me is that, you be a giver,
It sounds like the old adage, or I don't know if it's the new adage of me loving me doesn't necessarily mean that I dislike you.
Right. But I mean, to be honest, I have had a battle with that. I mean, it was a battle. In my older years, I have really been able to process it and really understand why I have been so closed off to other ethnicities. Period. Because I didn't feel safe. But then I had to realize that those were incidents with people and situations. That's not everybody. That's the same as me feeling like, you see Black people, you grab your purse or you walk across the street, But it took time for me to be able to process through that because I'm a Black history buff. I'm not even a Black history buff. I'm a history buff. I like to read. I like to know about the history. I like to know about history. I want to see where we've been, and not where we've been Black people. I know where we've been, just as a whole, as a country, and what can we do to move forward, to push past this. But we were raised to be givers. And my brother he told me, I finally got him to go to therapy, but he told me that, sometimes I want to say no. And I feel like we were raised to not be able to tell people no. And he's like, and that's a problem for me. And I was like, but you can't tell people no. And I think that, and when he said that, I was like, no, we weren't. And I was like, and after I sat with it for a while, I was like, I get it. We were always taught that if you can, then you do. If you are capable of doing it, then do it, But, that's not necessarily the right thing. Because just because you're capable doesn't mean that you need to do that. It might not be in the best interest for you. It might not be in the best mental health or mental space for yourself. But in my heart and deep, I know that we are better together, and that we have to move forward the best way we can and try to make sure we make this place a good place for everybody. And I'm excited to do my little part, and what I can. And I feel like my little part is making sure that this line that's behind me gets the full understanding. And I'm real honest. I'm not a sugarcoater. So I'm very honest with, I was very honest with my children, raising them. And I'm very honest with my grandchildren, but the way I approach it is a little bit differently now on how I'll give them information.
Well, I think you're doing a good job. I do want to thank you for coming and talking with me here today, though.
Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate being here. I appreciate you asking me to come and speak with you and, have some interest in what I had to say.
No problem.